Hi there. In today's segment, we are going to do the wheel exercise, and I think this is a particularly timely topic to cover given a lot of the stress that people have been under for the last couple of years with COVID and all of the restrictions and changes that that's imposed. So I hope you enjoy it. So this is a quick check-in. As I mentioned, not just the performance of sellers today, but the attitude and concerns about the mental well-being of sellers today is increasingly a topic of conversation. And for sellers, for their managers, really for anyone, this is going to be in our general playlist. This is an exercise I learned years and years ago. It's a quick check-in, and I'm going to do the exercise here with you. So get yourself a piece of paper and a pen, and we'll get after it, okay? So you want to start by drawing a circle and then dividing that into 6 segments. And there are going to be 2 S's, 2 F's, and 2 P's for the 6 segments that we're covering. And the first S is, well, we'll start from the bottom. Let's start with a P. So the first one, since we're talking about this for work, is your professional segment. And along with that is your physical self. And then there are 2 F's. One is financial, and the other is family. And finally, the 2 S's, one is spiritual, and the other S is social. Okay, so these 6 segments or 6 aspects of self are what we're going to work with and see what the wheel can tell us. Okay, so I want to do a quick check-in, and we'll just start here with professional. I think I've been pretty good the last year and a half, given that we've been locked down and largely locked in. I've worked on, we've tried a couple of new things with our business, to pivot, to borrow a word, our business model when there's less travel and all, the Zoom meetings and everything. And I've learned a couple of new apps and have been trying those out. And, so I would say on a scale from 0 here in the center to 10 out here on the circumference, I think I've been, reasonably focused. I'm going to give myself an 8. So if this is 0 and this is 10, then this would be 5. So 8, I would say, is about here. And financially, the first half of 2020 was was good. The second half of 2020 was pretty much a disaster. In 2021, we carried some momentum into the year. I guess we built some momentum coming into the year, and it's been a pretty solid year. So I'm going to say financially, again, 0 to 10 out here on the circumference. I'm going to say, it was at least a 7. So if 5 we're halfway, 7 would be about in here. Okay. Socially, I think with COVID, it's been pretty much a 0. But now with the vaccine and, getting boosted and all of that, and here in Palm Springs, the season has really opened up. Everybody's becoming incredibly social as we head into the holiday season. So if it was a 0 and maybe now we're making up for lost time at overdoing it, I'm going to say maybe overall social has been a 5. And I would say, since we're doing a check-in, I'm going to say right now it's a 6 because we really are picking up the pace. And then physically, I think there's a reason they call it COVID-19. I wouldn't say I put on 19 pounds, but I probably have come close. And I'm now trying to work those off, which is also a lot of fun heading into the holiday season. But if I was working out pretty regularly and seriously pre-COVID. During COVID, it clearly fell off, and I would say now I'm getting back on the wagon. So I would give myself maybe a 6 for physical. Time with the family, maybe 6 is a little more than halfway. Family, has been tough because in large part, we've been separated and not really easily able to get to one another, like everybody else doing Zoom meetings and everything else. But again, that has improved in the last several months, and is picking up. So maybe it was a 3 during COVID, but I'm going to say it's more like a, maybe, is it everything I want? No. Could it be better? Sure. 5. And then finally, spiritually, and for some folks, that might mean religion and going to church or not going to church. For a lot of people, they're spiritual but not religious. It's really thinking about things, bigger than the day-to-day, bigger than ourselves, and, taking time out, whether it's for meditation or contemplation or being in service to others, or at least, holding them in good thoughts. I think some people spiritually, really had time and woke up, maybe slowed down and woke up to being more spiritual. Others may, because they were cut off from their community, may have felt less spiritual. But I would say for me, this year, I think I have been doing pretty well, certainly taking time, on a daily basis for, meditation. So I'm going to give myself at least a 4. So now that we've, sort of gone around the wheel here, what you want to do is connect the dots, but not just, the usual. If professional was 8, then this whole segment was an 8 or is an 8. And if financial was a 7, then this is a 7. And social, I said we picked up the pace, is now a 6. Physical was a 5. So we'll come around here like that. Family was also a 5 right here. And and spiritual was a 4, which would be a little bit inside that. And then you can connect it this way. And finally, you can just color this in, okay? And you may have gathered from my filling this out myself, and hopefully you doing it along with me, these aren't exactly precise. It's just, kind of a personal check-in, kind of a gut check on how you feel you're doing. And, they're not precise, but however you scale this, the question is, okay, if this is your wheel and you imagine this rolling along the time of your life, the question is, how's the ride? And I would submit, if you looked at this, the ride would be pretty bumpy. Pretty bumpy. I worked with one group, back when we were meeting live and having live sessions. One group had an engineer in the group. And he said, well, yeah, in this graphic, it would be bumpy. But if you really revved up the RPMs, you could smooth out the ride. And in fact, I think a lot of people try to do that. And in material science, there's a name for a metal shaped like this. It's not called a wheel, it's called a cam. And if you spun this thing fast enough to actually get a smooth ride along this plane, long before you got to a smooth ride, something else would happen. And that something else is that this cam or this wheel would fail. And again, in material science, there's a special name for that kind of failure. It's called a fatigue failure. And what happens is this thing spinning, and all of a sudden it just explodes. I mean, literally the molecules can't hang on to each other, and it's explosive. And what's interesting is it looks fine right up until the moment it fails, and then it's just gone. And I think that's especially relevant to this conversation because I think a lot of folks, when they are out of balance, try and overdo it or try and make up for it, kind of burn the candle at both ends. And that can lead to this exact same problem of fatigue, burnout, check out, whatever. It's just, you can't do everything. And by the way, you can't do everything out to a max 10. And that's not the object of this exercise. It's not to max everything out to 10 or 11 or 12. What you really want to do is pull things in a bit and balance this out. So maybe, in fact, because I was, locked in and working from home, maybe I was spending too much time professionally, and that was paying off, but it was costing me in other areas, physically, spiritually, and with my family. And so what you want to do is not max this out in one or more areas or all areas. What you want to do is balance it. And I'd always heard this term, but it never really meant anything to me before this exercise, which is someone being a well-rounded individual. That to me is what this represents. It's not just balance, but, sort of, and being well-rounded, but also being grounded and kind of in touch with all aspects of yourself on a daily basis. Anyway, that's the exercise. It's been interesting to me over the years to kind of look back at some of my journals. How often do you do this? Weekly, probably too often. Bi-weekly, maybe monthly would be frequent enough. But it's interesting over time to see how this can shift and how your priorities and therefore, your goal setting for the coming period can look. And so I hope you find that useful, and I'd be interested in your feedback. Thanks for taking time to watch.